live from my kitchen with Professor Steve Bowers. We are driving it home again. These episodes have morphed from me driving in my automobile to now me really just driving the point home as opposed to driving and talking. Steve and I have known each other for a long time. He was gracious enough, or he is gracious enough, to be on the show tonight. It's 10:57. It took him like 45 minutes to get this thing up and going. He might have an issue with technology,
I'm not a high tech guy.
as you can tell by his closet doors. Uh, anyway,
Pocket doors
uh,
would be awesome.
Steve is a black belt under Professor Jared Weiner. Um, all around good guy, a professional with a real life and a real education. He's an attorney, but he also owns a school. So he's going to give us hopefully some insight into some kind of unique things that he's experienced as a martial artist, transitioning from that into an instructor, transitioning from instructor to school owner. So if I haven't covered enough of it, Steve, please let the possibly butting into triple-digit fans of this show who you are and why people should listen to you.
Sure. I mean, you've covered a lot of the important bits. I'm also a parent. I have 3 young boys, and that occupies a lot of my time as well. But you covered exactly what it is. I actually am a co-owner. I have a partner who owns the school with me, which has been great and very helpful. Um, he's a mere purple belt, but he's a good guy nonetheless.
Well, according to some of my black belt friends, you don't become human till purple belt.
I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
So you have a partner, great. So let's get into the history of how long have you been training, where did you start, and what made you walk through the doors of that first academy that very first day?
Sure. So I wrestled in high school and college, and I went to law school afterwards. And I was in law school in Boston in 1997, and I was actually in the weight room, and I saw a guy walk past who was wearing a Boston Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu T-shirt, and I struck up a conversation with him because I had done judo and I had wrestled before, and and he said, we have a club. We have a club that meets 3 days a week. You should come train. And they had a brown belt instructor. He's now a black belt. His name's Pat Barbieri. And he and this guy Matt, who was the guy in the T-shirt, just, I mean, brutalized me. Just without even breaking a sweat, beat me up. I was bigger than Matt. I wasn't bigger than Pat, but I was bigger than Matt. And there was nothing I could do. And I immediately fell in love. Just thought, this is amazing what they're doing to me. I want to be able to do it to other people. And so I started training there, and it was basically Boston University Jiu-Jitsu Club, and they were loosely affiliated with Boston Brazilian, which is still a great school up in Boston. And I trained with them until I ended up moving back to Philadelphia. I lived in Boston while I was going to law school, but both my wife and I always knew that my girlfriend at the time, now wife, knew we were going to move back to Philadelphia because both of our families are here. We both grew up in Westchester. And so when we moved back, I went to Maxercise and started training with, because of my schedule, because I was a lawyer at the time, because we moved back after I graduated law school. I was training mostly in the mornings, which is where Jared taught at Maxercise. So that's how I started with Jared. And when Jared split off and started his own school, he was the main instructor I had known for the whole time I'd been in Philadelphia, which was about, I guess we moved down here. I graduated law school in '99. We moved down here in late '99, and I guess the split happened about 2002. So he was the instructor I had known for 2 years. He had taken me from white to blue belt, and I followed him to his club in Jenkintown and was with him ever since.
So,
White to black.
so it's pretty. It's not that common these days to have somebody say that they started with an instructor from white belt all the way to black belt. Now, what would you say is the biggest quality that Jared has as your instructor that has kind of kept you loyal to him?
It's a good question, and I mean, it's a really kind of controversial issue in Jiu-Jitsu. I don't. I mean, there's this attitude of uh, of owing loyalty, and I don't think that that's appropriate. I don't think that loyalty is an end of itself. Loyalty's earned, and Jared earned it. Jared, he shared a lot of knowledge with me, and he did it freely and clearly and openly and in the way that was best suited for my learning and for his students' learning. It may not have been comfortable at all times,
Right.
particularly when I was under his knee on belly, but it was what I needed at the time, and as a result, I was and am extremely loyal to him. He's a great guy. He's a great friend. He's a spectacular instructor, and I never even considered moving to another position. But I'm of the opinion that if it didn't work, if an instructor-student relationship doesn't work, just because that's the first instructor you found doesn't mean that you should stick with them. I am vehemently opposed, and you said in our little pre-recording introduction that you didn't want to get controversial, but I'm going to do it anyway.
No, well, we call that the green room. We were in the green room.
Oh, yes, exactly, in the green room. There were no appetizers. We got some wine.
It wasn't in your contract, so.
Only blue M&Ms. I'm vehemently opposed to the whole Kriyanchi mentality, or however you pronounce that.
Right.
So yeah, and I think that loyalty is earned.
I don't think that's controversial. I'm sorry to step on what you're saying. I just think that's, you're expressing what I think most, well, let's just say Americans feel is like, hey, you're good to me and you're giving me what I'm looking for, then I'm going to stick with you. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the basics of it. If you're not good to me or you're not giving me what I'm looking for, why should I stay?
Yeah, and as an instructor, frankly, although I think that is important, because you're an instructor, you're still learning. And one of the things you're learning is how to be an instructor. And if I'm not serving a student, if I'm not giving him what he needs, even if I lose that student, I want to know why I lost that student. I want to know what I wasn't giving that student, so that, maybe if it's something that, after knowing what the issue was, that it's something I should change, then I'm going to change it. And you're not going to get that feedback if there's this, no, the instructor is always right. The loyalty is the end of it in and of itself. And you won't get that kind of feedback. You won't get that kind of learning.
Right. So, like, I could definitely appreciate what you're saying, and I kind of tell my students, I say, look, this place is as much of a democracy as it was in Libya. I used to say this before Gaddafi was taken, and killed and all this other stuff. So now it's not nearly as it doesn't hit home as well. But I don't want them to think that they can't come and talk to me, right?
Yeah.
Before. So ultimately, the decision of the direction of the school lies with us, right? Not with the students. But I feel like if you're a good instructor, you will listen to students. Now, I mean, if it's some sort of nonsense thing that goes counter to what your beliefs are in jiu-jitsu, then kind of like hey, that's not the path we want to go down. These are the reasons why we don't want to do it. Now, if you don't understand those reasons, then maybe this isn't the place. If you do understand those reasons, then this continues to be the correct place for you.
Agree completely. But to the extent you give them feedback, or they give you feedback, and you think, you know what? Okay, maybe that's not something we should do, or maybe that's something that would fit well into the way school to go. Then there's no reason, just because, I mean, like we said, white belts aren't really human, but there's no reason you can't listen to them nonetheless.
Right. So now some of the lessons learned, and we'll it looks like we're going to jump around, but this is fine because this is an interesting direction we've already started down. Um, so a lot of this is kind of like almost reactionary. You want to find out why they've left, or if if a student leaves. Have you two things: been around long enough to now use some of that preemptively, in the sense of when somebody walks through the door and you go, hey man, you seem like a great guy, or you seem like not a great guy and I don't want you here because of these reasons, or they come to you with a goal set that doesn't kind of fall in line with what your school goal set is? Are you at a point, or have you kind of told people, hey, this isn't the place for you because we don't offer or we don't do what you're looking for? And I don't even
Yeah,
mean from a martial arts perspective. I mean just from a kind of operational perspective.
yeah. I mean, we haven't turned anyone away, but we have told people that. Um, I've had people come in and try out. We have the free tryout class, and they say, could you do more of this? Could you do more of that? One guy wanted, even though the class he was in was self-defense oriented, he wanted much more um, street self-defense oriented. And I teach self-defense. I do teach some self-defense, but primarily I do it to train. My game is moderately sporty. It's been called white collar, and that's the way I like to teach. That's the stuff I know. And that's the stuff that I transfer. Students sort of follow what their student does. Everybody in my school plays Z half guard because that's what I play. And so I'm going to teach my strongest areas, the areas that I can express the most detail and that I can give understanding to. And I'm not going to change what I'm doing because of this dramatic change. Now, that being said, what they said expresses to me something that sometimes gets lost and sometimes would be important. Your instructor or teammate Rick put up a pretty good meme recently where he said, "You're a black belt and you don't know basic self-defense, but that's none of my business." It was that meme. I thought that was very good. Because I do know the basic self-defense moves, and it is important that you review them and teach them to the students. But there's a limit to that, and the ability to keep the liveness and the uniqueness of Jiu-Jitsu, which allows you to go full bore 100%. If you have a guy, and this is important to do occasionally, but it's not what I want to focus my school around. If you have a guy that's swinging punches at you, the idea, let me back up. The idea behind Jiu-Jitsu, in my opinion, is that you train, you fight like you train. And when you train Jiu-Jitsu, you are able to fight with your opponent at 100% resistance, trying your hardest to win and trying your hardest not to lose, and still have both guys come back the next day and train. And there are very few sports, there are very few martial arts where you can do that, where if you are going 100% and somebody wins and somebody loses, that the loser is going to come back and train the next day because he's going to be nursing a broken orbital socket.
Right.
And that's the way I like to teach. That's what I like to teach. I like to teach stuff that can be used in that methodology. And some of the self-defense stuff, though it's vital and very important, and every single student should know it, doesn't fit into that mode. Or doesn't fit into that mode in a way that can be part of a bigger picture.
Well, the beauty of this is that you were neither right nor wrong, right? Because it's simply your opinion, right? I mean, this is the way I'm viewing it.
Yeah,
right? Your opinion. So and that's the beauty that of so many martial arts academies, so many jiu-jitsu academies that there are now, is that somebody can come to you, Mainline United, and say, "This is exactly what I'm looking for." right?
Mhm.
This is, or they come in and say, man, I want more self-defense. And then you make that decision, right? Do I want to add more self-defense? Do I make it, more self-defense oriented? Do I add more self-defense classes? Or do I say, hey, we're not that place. We have a little bit of it. These are the reasons why. Or if not, hey, here's recommendations of A, B, and C of you can go check out to kind of that might offer that to you.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah, and the beauty of, I mean, I don't have to tell you, Philadelphia is an absolute mecca for jiu-jitsu. And the beauty of it is, yeah, you can go somewhere else and find a school that has a different demographic, a different focus, a different attitude of instructor. And the beauty of it is most or all of us are get along really well.
Yeah, that is. And some of the ones that we don't get along with wind up selling their schools and moving out of state. So, um, but realizing that now, are you at a point now with your school that you can separate beginners and advanced and that kind of thing? And if so, is there a focus shift from a technical standpoint between the two classes?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we're a relatively small school, so I don't have the 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 density of students that it would be advisable at this point to separate out student beginner and advanced. What we do is we have a dedicated fundamentals program, which sort of in the regular classes we go through. More advanced techniques. We have themes. We're talking about Kimuras and Kimura defenses right now. I think I told you before when
Yeah.
we were in but for the fundamentals program, which is our Saturday class, we rotate through basically 6 classes, and it continually rotates. And it goes. It's something like I do an attack and a defense from a particular position, whether it be guard, mount, side mount, back, standing, or we double up on guard. I do guard twice in that sequence because it's sort of the fundamental position of jiu-jitsu. So the reason behind that is because we were getting new students come in, and when we had themes, when we had like the Kimura that we have now, or if we were doing half guard or something like that, you would have a student who would go through 3 months of class or 2 months of class, and they would only have seen half guard, and they would never know a basic pass, or they would never know how to cross choke from mount. So what I wanted to do is have this, although I wanted to do thematic classes, I wanted to make sure that the regular students who had been there were getting a lot of detail and a lot of options from particular positions. I wanted to make sure that there was this constantly reiterating program that someone who came in day one could have a breadth of jiu-jitsu rather than depth in a very narrow focus.
Right, and it sounds like that program, you said it's your fundamentals program? It gives context to the themes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one thing. If, for example, we're talking about Kimuras from right now, and I taught a pass which my good friend Andrew Smith once showed me, which is based upon a Kimura. And if I told a guy whose only experience has been Kimura from the guard, Kimura from half guard, Kimura from top half guard, okay, this is how you're passing, and he didn't, well, why am I passing? What's the advantage? I've got the Kimura from top half guard. Why would I want to pass to side mount? And if he's never seen a pass, if he's never seen guard, if he's never seen why it's better to be on the side than in the pass, he's not going to realize why that is such a powerful technique and why it's so good that you're not only threatening the submission, but you're getting to a better position.
Now these are, like from a standpoint of structure, that's something that jiu-jitsu academies were very much lacking back in the day when we started, and now there seems to be, you said one of the things that kind of brought you in was the beating that you took,
Mm-hmm.
right? And nowadays, I really don't think that people are into getting that beat up and then turn around to pay you money to have that happen.
There are some.
And they troll the internet all the time. So, but that's really good, because I think your students are pretty lucky from that standpoint, because you have your instructors and people whomever that you kind of talk with that are advising you, having a curriculum and having kind of that thematic aspect of it is just super important, because it also makes your life easier as an instructor, but it also makes anybody that teaches classes for you
Sure.
their lives easier, because then it's just, hey, this is the class you're teaching, this is how I want it taught. Kind of move on. Now we do a similar where I kind of break up the fundamentals in the three three basic positions, right? Where it's top, bottom, self-defense, right? So top meaning first week takedowns, second week passing, third week submissions from the top, fourth week review, right? Then we go to the fifth week. If they're starting from week one, we go to
Sure.
the fifth week, defending the takedown, sprawling, cross-facing, grip fighting, and all that other stuff. If you defenses are beaten, then how to get to guard, right? And once you're to guard, how to sweep, right? Different scissor sweep, bump sweep, the different sweep, basic sweeps from the guard. If they've been able to stabilize, then where do we go? We go to our submission game, right? Because we'd rather be on top and submit than be on bottom and submit. But if we have to be on bottom, let's submit from on bottom. And then we go from those kind of combative but sportive aspects of it till we take it to how to deal with somebody punching, how to deal with somebody kicking from the feet, how to deal with somebody punching if we're on our back, and how to punch and get into our jiu-jitsu positions when we're on top, and then a review. So it's really refreshing to hear, especially because you haven't had your school that long, have you?
No, we were in one location for about 2.5 years, and we've been in our current location. It'll be 2 years in March.
Now this is good, because as a kind of a quote unquote new school owner, it's a really progressive mindset to have this structure, because a lot of times it's easy just to be like, I'm just going to teach this today,
Sure. And I don't want to say I don't do that. When we get between when we've ended one theme, occasionally I'll have just a couple classes of random techniques, which will usually be things that I've picked up watching the students train or training with the students, where there are missed opportunities or holes or positions that would fit well into games that people are playing. So occasionally, and it'll be like a technique that doesn't necessarily have a theme, or that doesn't fit well into something that I want to teach more broadly, but is something that I think is important to share. So when we end Kimura's, I'll take 4 or 5 classes and just throw some random stuff before we get into our next theme.
Right, and like I use the example of I look at the school as one person, right? And I'm trying to get the school better, with thematic, because we do the same thing, from a thematic standpoint, and then we'll move into a question and answer period once we get past the theme and all this other stuff. So let's move away a little bit from the kind of the technical talk, because this is something we could chat about for a while. What was the kind of drive to open up Mainline United? What was, why not just continue being a student?
Yeah. Honestly, it was very selfish. It is because I was, when I opened it up, I had young kids, and I had a very challenging time, still have a very challenging time-consuming job. It was very difficult to get up to Jenkintown to train a lot.
There's no easy way to get to Jenkintown from anywhere, from what I could tell.
There really isn't. It's and I mean.
Hey Jared, we're sorry. We don't mean anything by that.
So it was. I had the choice of either spending a lot of time on 76 or Route 1, or bringing my gear to the office and not seeing my family for 16 hours at a time. So I thought, if I open up a school near me, it's going to force me to be on the mat. I can't say, I'm too tired today, I'm going to go sit on my couch and have a beer. I've got to go. I've got responsibilities. I've got to go to my students. And it has been good for me that way. It has forced me on the mat. It has forced me to train on days when maybe I would rather have not. And it's been by far a net positive, if solely for that. even excluding the massive benefits that the massive emotional benefits that I get from seeing my students learn something, which has been a truly eye-opening, amazing experience for me. It's been good for my own training because it's made it more consistent.
Now, do you feel like at a certain point, though, or in the beginning when your students weren't that kind of, these guys basically suck, right? They're subhuman at this point. They're not purple belts. Um, did your training take a hit? Did you feel like your skill level might have kind of not stayed to where you want it to be because you're trying to develop these students and get them from subhuman to human?
Yeah, but it's a little more subtle than that because I think my skill level actually, well, no, overall my skill went down, clearly. Um, but I got much more technical because I was able to take my time with techniques and determine why they were working. What really suffered was my intensity, because I really had to shut down my aggressiveness against when you're going against people who don't know what they're doing. You really
Right,
have
and for those of you that like I've had the honor to train at Jared's at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu United. I don't care who you train with there. It's it is not accepted to take it easy on anybody.
very true, and that like I said, it comes from the top down. It comes from the instructor down. People train the way the instructor trains, and Jared will come at you, and that is a I'm saying that in a very positive way. Um, but yeah, and that was difficult for me to do to really ramp down, and it's even more difficult to ramp back up. So if I was just training with a bunch of brand new guys, um, a competition would have been completely out of it just wouldn't have worked. I would not have been able to compete at the level that I would have needed to because I would have, like I said earlier, you fight the way you train. And if I'm used to, okay, maybe I'll give up this position and see what works from here. Maybe I'll experiment with where I place my hands. Well, a guy who knows what he's doing, he's going to take advantage of that. And when I experiment with my hands, he's going to say, oh, well, you know why you don't do that? Because I'm going to arm lock you. So yeah, that was a negative, I guess. But what was really interesting is when you get a bunch of brand new guys and you start training with them, and they come at you in this uncontrolled fashion and not reacting correctly, all of a sudden you realize, can I say bad words on this?
Yes, you can.
Okay. All of a sudden you realize this shit works. It's not just a game that you're playing where a guy says, oh, you put your knee there, that means I'm supposed to get swept, that means I'm going over because I know that technique. It actually works against people who don't know that it's supposed to work. And that was really an amazing experience for me, that you go against these guys who have no idea what's going on, whether they got wrestling backgrounds, whether they were me going against Matt and Pat in Boston University, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is what it felt like to be them. This is why jiu-jitsu is so effective, because against a guy who doesn't know jiu-jitsu, it's an entire world that they've got no idea what's happening, and that was really neat.
No, that's awesome to hear because it's kind of it just um, reinforces why we started, right? I mean, going back to your original statement of getting beat up, like I remember getting beat up and wanting to throw up and not being able to breathe, and all things that people listening like, well, why would I want to do jiu-jitsu if I can't do any of that stuff? Because it's awesome, right? That's why. Um, but yeah, it's amazing how training with beginners really does that for you in the sense of it lets you see how helpless somebody feels, especially when you're kind of at this point in our lives we're black belts, and imagine when you were a blue belt, you can make people feel that way. They just they don't know the difference. So yeah, you really kind of I had these questions laid out, but we flowed into them so naturally. It's been great. What kind of guys do well? What kind of students? I shouldn't say guys, but men and women, because I know you have. I love. By the way, I love Anne Lorino in a very platonic way. She's awesome, and she came to visit not too long ago. But what kind of people thrive? What kind of people do well at Mainline United?
We have a good cross section. We have a really good because we're so small. I know all my students pretty well, and we have a really good cross section. We have some younger athletic guys, some older professional guys, but a good group of people. Honestly, what type of people do well? We'll take all types as long as you're not a jackass. I mean, we have a really good vibe, and I like the vibe that we have, and I try to maintain that vibe. So as long as you're not, bullying people that are less experienced or smaller than you, or doing all of the nasty things that you and I both know happen in jiu-jitsu academies, you're welcome. And I have always been of the attitude that everybody has something to teach. I mean, we've been joking all along about white belts being not human, but I've learned a lot from white belts. And as long as you are willing to share what maybe your insight into a position, or what you felt from a particular submission, or what's working for you, then I want you in my school.
So it sounds like somebody that's basically open-minded, willing to share, and somebody that wants to help the team as much as themselves.
Yeah, I mean, and that's if you look at it right, that's self-interested as well. If you make your opponents better, particularly again in a small school where you're going to be training with the same guys over and over again, if you make them better, then you're making you better.
It's always selfish when you're helping your training partners. Like I did one of my driving at homes. I was actually driving, and back in the day, I don't know if you were there then, but there was a guy by the name of Charles Williams, and he was top of the food chain, and for some reason he liked me and he helped me get better. And I knew as much as it was because he was like a good dude, but he eventually wanted me to stop sucking so that he could train with me so that I can give him a run. You
Right.
know?
Exactly. And if you teach people, I mean, look, if you've got a technique that just works, constantly works, but there's a defense to it, and maybe theoretically what you would do if that defense happens. I'm trying to think of an example. Like, okay, so I've got a really good straight foot lock, and I know that if they shoot the boot and pull themselves up, that's going to stop the footlock from happening. But I know that I can do a pass from there. I can do it into a high leg drag and turn it right into a quick pass. And theoretically, I know that. But if no one ever stops my straight foot lock, if no one ever counters that move, I'm never going to get to that second level move. I'm never going to actually train that. And then when I do go against someone in a competition or somewhere else that can stop that foot lock, I'm going to hesitate. I'm going to know theoretically what to do, but I'm going to have to think about it. Whereas if I had taught my training partners, if I had taught my students, this is how you defend the move that I'm doing to you constantly over and over again, then I would get experience both in attacking that technique and in doing the secondary technique. And maybe I'm not going to get as many taps in training as I would. Maybe that'll take a blow to my ego. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be much better because I'm going to be able to beat someone who can stop my A move. And that's really coming back to what we were talking about how you can beat people up when you're a blue belt and then you beat them up when you're a black belt. That's really what I think the progression from blue to black is about. Is when you're blue, maybe into purple, you've got all these A moves. You've got these moves that work as direct moves, and as you advance, you've got what happens if the opponent reacts appropriately to your move. And that's sort of I'm jumping back. This interview should have a lot of footnotes and arrows going back up.
That's fine. I think anybody with that has the ability to have like a couple levels of thinking will get it. So don't worry about it. And
Yeah.
if not, they're not the 100 people we want hearing.
But that's what I was experiencing when I had these brand new guys coming into the school, is that I was so used to training with high level guys that I would have to get to the B, the C, the D moves because the first series would stop, and that or would be blocked or would be appropriately defended. And now the new guys weren't reacting correctly, and as a result, the A move was working. And so, hey, I'm never getting to my X guard. Why? Because my scissor sweep isn't working.
Right, right, right. No, that's pretty amazing. It definitely your passion for this comes out, and the cool thing is, and I have a lot of respect for the guys, like you, that this is, you have your family, right? You have a profession, you're a lawyer, you got to do the billable hours things, and you're still putting the time in, number one, to teach, but number two, to teach in a thought out manner. Like we said, it could be easy, or sometimes you do walk in like, oh, I'm going to teach this or whatever. I'm going to, just go through it, or today's an open map. But, your students are pretty lucky from my standpoint that you care enough to kind of have the structure set up for them to kind of maximize what their success can be. Now, I want to kind of wrap it up because I know you got to get to work, and I want to go to sleep, man. Um, if twofold, the elevator pitch. Get into an elevator, and you're wearing a Mainline United T-shirt, and somebody says, "Hey, what is that?" And you got to tell them what Jiu-Jitsu is, and then they go, "Well, why would I want to join your school? Like, what's your elevator pitch for Jiu-Jitsu?" And then a step further, why Mainline United?
Sure. My favorite metaphor for what jiu-jitsu is it's like doing yoga with a partner who doesn't want to do yoga. But that's not a great elevator pitch. The elevator pitch it is very difficult to describe how simultaneously empowering and humbling it can be to try your very hardest to do something and not succeed, and know why you didn't succeed. Know that your technique was off. Know that somebody was better than you, and know that you can get better and get to that level. And that feeling, that ability of self-improvement and measurable, quantifiable, noticeable self-improvement carries itself over to every other aspect of your life. At least it has for me, and it has for a lot of people I've spoken with about this. We have a sign in our bathroom at the school which says...
Wash your hands?
Yeah, well, next to that one. That says... it says something to the effect that jiu-jitsu will be the hardest thing you ever do, but if you persevere, you'll become the best version of yourself. And I actually believe that. I mean, it's trite, and a lot of people who don't train, who give you the karate hands when they hear what you do. It's difficult to express to them, and maybe I'm not a good enough salesman to describe the.
No, I think to be honest, people don't want to be sold, right? They want to be they want to kind of I believe they want to be presented passionately, and you're doing a good job of presenting your passion. So then why would they want to become the best version of themselves at Mainline United? Why Mainline United as opposed to somewhere else?
Because everybody in the school feels about jiu-jitsu the way I do. And it is a great environment in which to train. At least that's what they expressed to me. Everybody in there is passionate about learning. Everybody in there is passionate about helping everybody else. Everybody in there is a great training partner and presents a different challenge for everybody else in there. Plus, it's such a small group that there's a great deal of camaraderie. There aren't any people who are sort of isolated or left to the side or excluded. Which, I mean, as we grow, that I'm sure that'll be a problem that'll develop. But as of right now, it's very much a family atmosphere. And I mean, hopefully that's something that I'm inculcating to the students, but it certainly comes from Jared, because that's the same type of environment that Jared had, and that's what my jiu-jitsu life grew up as. So that's what I'm hoping to share with my students.
Where do I sign up? Because
You're welcome anytime, Marco. We want you out. Come on out.
Uh, um, Steve, I appreciate it. I know it's kind of late. I'm not sure how long we went. This was probably one of the more interesting conversations I've had, just because some of the people I've talked to, not that they're not very interesting, but kind of seeing where you're at in this period of your professional martial arts career, and seeing the effort that you're putting in. It's really awesome to see. So I want to congratulate you on that, and let your students know that not every school has an instructor that, oh, curse, gives a shit. Not every school has an instructor that wants their students to get better and understands that it's culture, it's curriculum, it's having a program, it's wanting to make people better. It's not just an avenue for you to beat people up. So I applaud you on that. And hopefully your students, if they don't know already, and if they could suffer through the 40 to 45 minutes of you and I talking, they'll get they'll get that understanding. So if you have any parting shots, we can put them out now. Any sponsors, anything, any events coming up at your school that you'd like to know, let people know about?
The only event we do teach a dedicated women's self-defense program. We do the Girls on Guard program that was developed by Steve Cardian, and I'm a big believer in it. We are giving a 1-day, 2-hour seminar on January 19th, and you can sign up on our website.
All right, so what I'll do is you can send me that link. What I'll
Yep.
do is I'll put the link in the description, and anybody that's interested, click the link, and it'll take them right there, so they won't have to type it in or anything. So,
Perfect. I will just give a shout out to my partner, Paul Miller, who has been just an outstanding business partner, outstanding training partner, and Mainline United would not exist in its form without him. So,
all right, everybody, driving it home with Professor Steve Bowers. Steve, thank you for being on.
thanks for having me, Marco.